Hey, it's Johara. Welcome back to my channel, to the Witchy Reader. So I'm going to be doing um, the episode 2 of my underrated series highlights series I'm doing. I know I'm a little late. It took me forever to finally film the first video, and now it's taking me forever to film the second video, just because I knew it was going to be long. Like, I rant about Seekers, and when I talk about Seekers, like, it takes me forever to stop. Especially since I'm talking about each book and series as a whole. So there's lots to talk about. um, and um, so I'm finally filming it. Finally got the motivation. I was gonna film it yesterday, but then I started not feeling well, and I couldn't find the notes on my phone, or I couldn't find my phone, and the notes are on my phone, and so I was like, this is a sign not to film it tonight, so I just didn't. But I'm filming it now, so yay. Um, So book one, so this series is actually called Seekers Return to the Wild. And then each one has their own individual name. This one is Island of Shadows, which will be what we're talking about first, because it's the second arc. The first arc is just called Seekers. This arc is called Seekers Return to the Wild. But this book, Island of Shadows, is the first one of this arc. Okay, well, Toklo is up front, which you could tell means Toklo's a little bit more important in this book. Like, each character has that, and they switch off. Like, there's 3 characters it shows on the covers, and there's 6 books in each arc. So in each arc, each of the 3 characters get on there twice. So, but it always shows like them here as well. But it shows like the main one here. So it shows a brown bear, which means you know it's Toklo, and so you know that Toklo is gonna have the main storyline, and but in this book, after the events of last book, they're beginning to leave Star Island. They're trying to figure out how to leave Star Island. And Yakon had joined them, which I mentioned in the last book. It's revealed that he's going to join them. Um, in this book, you can see Kalik and Yukon slowly start to get closer. Yukon leaves to join Kalik because he doesn't want to leave her, and they're really close. But like I mentioned, I love how the main thing in this series is still the friendship, even now that romance has finally been introduced. The friendship between these bears is still the most important thing. Um, so even though shows Kalik and Yokon start to get closer, they kind of just sprinkle it in throughout the entire series. Even at each book, once they get closer and closer and closer, they still sprinkle it in, and it's still not taking over the story, which I love. Um, and Toklo's jealous of Yokon because he starts one he tries to take he doesn't try to take over, but it looked like he was in Toklo's eyes. And Toklo kind of likes being the leader. He likes being the one that takes care of everyone. Him and Kalik, that yeah, they are the mother and father of the group. They always say every friend group has a mother and father. Well, that's them. And they're all grieving since Udrak died at the end of last book. um and It causes Kalik and Toklo to argue because Kalik and Toklo, they care about each other. They are family, but as you guys know, family doesn't always have to like each other and get along, and they butt heads because they are too much alike at times. I mean, Kalik has more compassion than Toklo. Toklo hides his compassion more than Kalik, but they've both been through a lot, and they're both the older ones. I mean, when Ujak was live and before Yukon joined them, you know, they were the older ones, and they always had to be the ones to take charge and to help the younger ones. And yeah, um, but they argue because Tokuro doesn't like Yukon at first, and Kalik, even though she loves Tokuro, she's having these new feelings that's different than what she feels for Tokuro and therefore Yukon. So she wants to defend Yokon, but she also wants to be near her family, Toklo and Musa. Udrak is still with them, and they always look up in the stars to see if they can find Toklo, Udrak, and Udrak every so often, whenever one of them really needs the help, he comes to them in a dream, or sometimes he comes to them in like a spirit form, I guess you can say, and lead them with what they need, where they need to be led or whatever. But he comes to Kalik in a dream and tells her that her gift is to calm them and keep them together. He basically tells her that she is the glue that keeps them together, because she's a leader like Tokolo, but she's a compassionate bear like Lusa. So because of that, she becomes like she's the glue that needs to keep them together and to keep them from fighting. And since Kalik and Toklo were fighting, and so Yujek tells her that she needs to um, calm them and keep them together, because she's not only a leader like Toklo or compassion. Okay, so the thing is, Toklo is the leader of the group. Obviously, he's the fierce protector. Then there's Lusa, who is sweet and kind, and then Yujak is the smart and reasonable one. But Kalik, she has a little bit of each of those, and that's why she's the glue that keeps them together. Um, at one point, Toklo gets injured by flat faces. Never fun. Um, but when so they had to stay where they were a little bit longer so that Toklo could heal, and I mean, it wasn't life threatening or anything. I mean, he's had worse wounds. They all have. But he wakes up to seeing Yujak licking his wounds and making him better. But then he, drifts off again and wakes up and Yujak's gone. Um, and Yokon, he didn't really know Yujak. He had met him shortly before he died, and even then they didn't really have any real conversations, or he didn't really get to know Yujak because the group was kind of off by themselves in the island with the bears. Um, so she doesn't understand, or I said she, Yokon, he doesn't understand the long journey that you have to take, and he complains a lot because like he's used to being on snow and now they're not on snow, and snow and ice is his thing, and I mean Kalik already had to have that issue where when she first got off ice and snow, and now um, Yukon has to get used to it as well. Well, actually, in this book, I think he does his majority complaining later, because like I think they're still on snow. They're trying to lay the snow. Um, but Yukon seems throughout this book, Yukon seemed jealous of Kalik and her friends, because like they have this strong bond and that you cannot break, and they care about each other and love each other despite the fact that they are different types of bears and they're not supposed to. I mean, whenever other bears saw them together, they were always like confused and like why, like if they saw a white bear, the white bear would ask Kalik why you're hanging out with them and like that. So um so there was a snowdrift. Yeah, because there's still snow. So Toklo was on the snowdrift and it collapsed and he fell through and he was in like this dark tunnel and he had to try to find their way out while the others tried to find him, and they were kind of freaking out and afraid that he could have gotten hurt, that he could be lost forever because they have no idea where he is now. Um, Lusa starts to freak out because it's like she um after they found him, and because she was trying to remember the herbs that Ejek showed her because he always knew the right herbs, and now she's kind of taking on that role to be the one to heal everybody whenever they get injured. And then but Ejek does come to her and show her the right herbs for Toklo and his injuries. um then they meet Nanulak. I don't like Nanulak. He's a half white and half brown bear. He only likes Toklo because he doesn't like the white part of him. So, and he hates Lusa, Kalik, and Yukon because they're not brown. And he doesn't understand why Toklo hangs out with them when they're not brown. And uh I mean, at one point, Lusa even thought that he left her to wait that because she got like she was in this hole and she couldn't get out, and she swore that Nenu like saw her and still walked away pretending he didn't, and so she didn't trust him. After that, well, she didn't really trust him before, but now she's like sure she doesn't. She's like sure that he's awful. Um, Toklo did get really close to a nice white bear, Takani, and it was the first indication of Toklo having feelings for someone. This is not the person he ends up with. He doesn't end up with. He meets the person he ends up with the second to last book, I think. Um, but Nanulak picks fights all the time and lies constantly. And he tries to get Toklo to turn on his friends, like that's going to happen. But they do kind of Lusa at one point makes a comment that he is trying to fill the void he for losing Udrak. And Toklo is always like no, 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 but they do find his family, and it turns out he lied because he said that he was disowned for being half white and half brown because the brown bears didn't want him because he was white. The white bears didn't want him because he was brown. Turns out that was a lie. He disowned his family because his white part of his family. Actually, no, he disowned both of them. He hated the white part of his family, and then he hated the brown part because the brown bears liked the white bears. And then Toklo got all upset and that he lied, and then he said that his family still wants him, and um, then Nulak thought Toklo ended up, going against him because he was siding for it with his family as well, and yeah, so he kind of ran off. But yeah, that was kind of the events of the first book, Island of Shadows. Next book is The Melting Sea, and obviously this one is going to be mostly about Khalid because they're going to the Melting Sea. This is where Khalid and Yukon were going to end their journey, where they were going to start their life, and Khalid was hoping to find her brother. This is where she grew up, and she was excited to show her home to Yukon, but she is nervous throughout it because she's afraid she isn't it's too big. She's not gonna be able to find Takik. She won't remember all the places her birth den was, or where she hunted seals for the first time because it's been forever since she's actually been there. Um, but Toklo feels threatened by Yukon because he's another strong, fierce bear, and but Gleek and Yukon grow even closer, especially now that she is my phone is going off. But I'm gonna turn off my notifications or the sound. Okay, so they go even closer because Kalik is excited and Yukon excited to get back to ice because they left ice momentarily, I think, until they find the melting sea. But they're not there very long because they do get to the melting sea. Um, and um, so Kalik shows symptoms. This isn't the first time she shows symptoms for this, and I think I might have mentioned in my last video about Seekers, but she shows symptoms of PTSD. Like there was a thing before whenever the metal bird in the last arc, metal bird took Udrak, and Kalik kind of freaked out because she remembered when she was on a metal bird, which I explained all of that in my last video when it happened, and but they see a male bird again and it crashes, I think, does it, and which makes her even more jittery than last time she saw the metal bird, because last time it was fine, it did not crash, but this time it did crash, and she was brought back to memories of when she was on the metal bird and when it crashed, and so she kind of freaked out a little bit. But Kaliki has memories of her childhood and how her journey started. um, Her friends comfort her through the crisis of the male bird, because they're always there for her. They're always there for each other. Um, Kalik starts to get overprotective because she's afraid of losing anybody else. She's lost a lot. I mean, and the people she's lost, she didn't just lose. I mean, she watched them die. Um, her mom died right in front of her, protecting her from an orca. Nisa died right in front of her when they were crashed, when the male bird crashed, and Ujak died in front of all of them. And there's nothing she could do, and she gets very protective, especially of Lusa, because Lusa's so much smaller than the rest of them. And she gets so Yoko keeps trying to tell her that Lusa can take care of herself, and she's like, yeah, but she's just afraid of losing anybody else because she's lost so much already. Um, mm. Lusa, um, Ujak saves Lusa from a pack of dogs at one point because he's always there. Even when he's dead, he's always there. And Yokon doesn't understand how Ujak saved Lusa from the pack of dogs but when Lusa told him what happened, Kalik and Toklo obviously understood right away. But then, Yokon was like, "Wait, what? Isn't he the dead guy?" I mean, I'm sure he said that with more sensitivity, but like he doesn't understand Ujak, or he didn't know about his shapeshifting abilities, or the whole spirits and him and being in the stars now, watching them over them, coming to them in dreams, saving them in spirit form. Um, and Toklo is very afraid about reaching the melting sea because he's not ready for them all to split up, because he knows once they get to the melting sea, Kalik and Yukon will stay while Toklo and Lusa continue on their journey. And he's not ready to split up yet. And Lusa is also fearful of that day because she doesn't want them to split up either. Kalik doesn't want to split up either, but Kalik is torn because it's like she wants to get to the melting sea so she can see her home and be on the ice again and be able to start this new chapter of her life with Yoko, but at the same time she's not ready to leave Tokyo Lusa. So it's like she's torn and she's very upset and doesn't know what to do. Um but Sheila was one of the bears that crashed in the Middle Plain, and she was separated from her family. So they decided to help her find her family. But then they run into Takik, who's been working with Salik again. I mentioned that in the last video, book 2, when Kalik had met Takik. He was helping a group of mean bears and Salik was the leader, and they weren't very nice. And she was very disappointed because she didn't recognize Takik anymore. And Kalik is furious at him, fights him, and tells him she hates him because she thought that he was good, that he had changed, but she was wrong. Um, but Takik got really upset because it's like he didn't want Kalik to hate him, and so he tells her that he didn't kill the family, Sheila's family, and agrees to help. And but one thing I loved was when was Toklo got mad at Takik and hated him, and for he hated him solely because he caused Kalik so much pain. And I just love that because I love their friendship. Like, they really care about each other. And um, I did not do this on purpose, but this is an appropriate necklace to wear because it has bears. It has pandas. My mom got it for me just a couple of days ago. So yeah. Um, but it's an appropriate necklace for this video. But anyways, I love what I was saying. Oh, and I just love how close they are and how Toklo hated Takik for causing Kalik so much pain, and it's sweet. Um, but Takik saves Kalik's life, which gets them to start becoming closer. But Kalik is still wary about trusting him again after everything. Um, Ujak, they this. Ujak comes to Toklo and tells him he must teach white bears because Melted Sea was gonna melt soon, and they would have to learn brown bear skills to survive. I mean, at least they have Toklo to teach them. Um, because Kalik had to learn all by herself. Like her mom wasn't there, she didn't know where her brother was, and she hadn't met Toklo or Lusa yet, so she had to legit learn how to survive on her own. I mean, so did Lusa technically. I mean, she left it bearable. But that was by choice. Kalik didn't have a choice. So, um, but they start to train and get ready, and they're also learning how to fight so that they can attack Salik and his team. And Takik was pretending to be on their side so that he could lead them into this trap, and they win. And Salik is stopped once again. um, but Kalik and Yokon decide to go with Chokolo and Lusa until they find their homes, and then they will return to the melting sea. Um, and Kalik and Tiki say goodbye as he decides to stay, obviously, because he has gotten close to Sheila, actually, despite the fact that Sheila hated him for working with Tiki, or Salik. So yeah, so that's the end of book 2. And in book 3, River of Lost Bears. In this book, they are trying to go to Toklo's home to find him a home. I think they're trying to go to where Toklo was born. But it's been a long time since he's been there, kind of like Kalik. And this is the first time that Yukon is really on land for a long period of time, and he hates. I keep wanting to say she. I don't know why, but he hates it. He hates it, and he does nothing but complain. Um, but Toklo ends up finding a black bear, Haken, for and fights him for attacking his sister Chinoa because he was really awful to his sister. But Chinoa saved Lusa from wolverines, and you find out that Chinoa had actually been following them since Toklo fought Haken. Um, and Haken shows up to try and retrieve Chinoa, but she doesn't want to go back, obviously. I mean, he was awful to her. Um, Toklo made the choice to leave her behind, but then Yujak came to Lusa explaining to her that Toklo feels like when one of them dies or gets hurt, it's all his fault. And because Lusa didn't understand why he was being that way, why he was being so pig-headed and stubborn, and wouldn't let Chinoa come with him on this journey. So Yujak explained it to him, so Luna tried to explain to Toklo it's not all his responsibility, and then Toklo hurt her and retrieved Chinoa. And then there's a whole thing where they had to cross a black path, and Chinoa got afraid and refused to run across, even though there's no fire beast coming at the time. And so they all ran through, and then Chinoa wouldn't. She was too afraid. So Kalik ran back, despite the fact that fire beasts were starting to show up, and she was able to get Chinoa to go across. And Yukon got really scared and was angry at her for risking her life like that. And Toklo decided to make an effort so many names to try to remember. Yakan, for Kalik's sake, and told him he was happy he traveled to be with her because he was happy that Kalik would have somebody once they all do finally split up. And he just wants her to be happy. I mean, they all do. But then Chinoa swept over a waterfall and died. It was heartbreaking. Lucy and Toklo both blamed themselves and were trying to push everyone away, which is what Toklo always does whenever something like this happens. But Lucy, she doesn't, so Kalik obviously got even more worried about her. Yokon saw how upset Kalik was because everyone was pushing her away, and she was trying to be the glue like Yujek told her she had to be in the last book, but she felt like she was failing because this is supposed to be her job to keep everyone together, to keep everyone sane and happy, but she was failing. So now all 3 of them blaming themselves for something. So Yokon was trying to make Kalik happy and feel better by making Toklo realize that it's not his fault and to cheer Lusa up. The thing about Kalik is that I mean, both Kalik and Tokolo are the independent ones. They are the ones that take care of people, and it's not easy for either one of them to let people take care of them. So when Kalik had Yukon, who wanted to take care of her, she found it hard to let him because she was the one that took care of everyone. It was always her job to take care of everybody. Even when Tokolo wore himself thin, she would take care of him. And yeah, so there was that going on. Kalik will always defend others, but never herself. Um, Yukon doesn't want to continue this journey. He wants to go to the melting sea, but Kalik doesn't want to turn her back on her family. Um, and then, Flatfaces started tearing out the forest, and Lucy wanted to save the spirits within the trees. Um, and this is also the book where Yukon got his foot stuck in a bear trap and almost died. And Kalik got all upset because she could not lose anybody else. Um, and then coyotes started hunting them because they were waiting for Kalik, or not Kalik, Yukon to die because he's gravely injured and there's a lot of blood. And I mean, he lost a couple toes. So yeah, and so they decided to make it so Yukon pretended to be dead to lure out the coyotes, and they could attack them and chase them off. Um, Toklo found the path to his home, and they decided to jump on a fire snake, which is basically a train. And then yeah, so they leave, and they are on the way to Toklo's home, which is Forest of Wolves, book 4. Um, they're heading to the mountains, and but they find out that once they get there, they find out there are wolves and a nasty grizzly in the area that keeps driving everyone away. Um, and they find out the wolves are tracking them. Never fun. um, Nisa and Nanook come to Kalik in a dream one time to tell her to let Yukon go, but she wouldn't. She doesn't want to lose Yukon, so she's insistent on saving him. Lusa keeps trying to find herbs to heal him, and they keep having to slow down or stop for several nights, even though they are in a not a great area to be stopping. But they're trying to save Yukon because none of them can lose anybody else. And at this point, even Toklo and Lusa have gone to the point where they care about Yukon, not as much or in the way that Kalik does, but he's starting to become one of them. And um, and especially since losing him will break Kalik, and they don't want that to happen either, obviously. Um, but then, oh no, I was wrong. Okay, this is the book that Toklo meets Ayana. Ayana is the bear that he ends up with. So he meets her in the 4th book, not the 5th. Okay, so yeah, but they didn't like each other at first. I'm not surprised that's Kalik will. Ow. Too many bears' names to remember. Um, I'm not surprised Toklo would find himself in an enemies to lovers kind of relationship. Like, that's obviously the kind of relationship Toklo would find himself in. um, Kalik decided to go to a nearby place with snow until Yukon was strong enough to travel back to the melting sea because Yukon is really injured now, and Kalik needs to do what's best for him now. Since the two of them are trying to start a life together. And Tokolo gets really upset because he's not ready to lose them. Um, and they meet Old Grizzly, which was the hostile grizzly they were warned about, and Toklo saved his life with the assistance of Ayana, and drove a pack of wolves away, but he was not appreciative. Um, and Toklo ended up remembering Chogen, that's the old grizzly, from his childhood, he was the one that drove him, his brother, and his mom away from their territory. But he ends up finding out that Chogen isn't just the bear that drove them away, that he is his father. So there's that. um, but Kalik and Yokon decide to continue with them to their journey. Continue with the group. Obviously, they're not gonna leave. Um, but then once they found homes for both Toklo and Lusa, they were going to journey back to Star Island instead of the Melting Sea. So they were trying to get a bunch of bears to band together to drive um, the wolves away and to trap them somewhere. So they end up getting help from a bunch of bears. They get help from Ayana and help from a mother and cubs that Lusa had saved, and helped and a mother and cubs that Kalik and Yokon had saved. Toklo fought Chogen and won, and Toklo and Ayana grew to care for each other, but obviously Toklo wants to continue on the journey until he found where Lusa was going to stay, because Toklo was going to return, and he was going to take Chogen territory once he returned, but first he wanted to find a home for Lusa. And that's how this book ends. And then, book 5, The Burning Horizon. So the group was trying to go to Great Bear Lake, because that's because I mentioned in my last video that my last Seekers video, that book 2 was called Great Bear Lake. They go to Great Bear Lake, and there's like, that's when white bears, brown bears, and black bears all join together, but they all still have their separate territory, because they're still not, they're cooperative and they're friendly enough to each other, but they tolerate each other, but they're not friends or anything. And so they're trying to go there so Lusa can find more black bears. She's hoping to find Miki, who was her friend that she met there, and hoping that she can go with them wherever they must go, and then Toklo can go back to the forest, and then Kalik and Yokon can go back to Star Island, and that is their plan. But they find themselves in a lot of flat face territory, which is not good. um, they get injured, They get attacked by flat faces, and some of them get injured. Kalik was running when she fell and got hit by a decent-sized rock, blacking out. Lusa was injured and taken by the flat faces, so there's that. And she was caged by them with other animals. And Udrak came again and told Toklo to follow the caribou to find Lusa. And so they find her caribou and decide to follow them and track them to find Lusa. And Kalik fell into a crevice and had to find a way out on her own. Toklo and Yokon decided to try to find Kalik, and then they will go find Lusa, but they were afraid of losing the caribou. But at the same time, they couldn't leave Kalik because she could die if they don't find her soon. So there's that. Lusa doesn't end up escaping on her own. She's very crafty that way. And Udrak joined Kalik so that she wouldn't be alone as they try to find their way out. And then the 3 bears got trapped in a flat-faced denning place. They just can't catch a break, I swear. But Kalik and Toklo kept trying to delay going to Great Bear Lake, because they knew that when they do, they'd all have to split up. And it's like, they know they need to, they can't. None of them, like, they all have their needs for what they need as their kind of species are very different. They know they can't live together forever, but at the same time they are a family and they aren't ready to say goodbye, but they're getting closer to saying goodbye. They found a lake that they thought was Great Bear Lake, but they were wrong, and they almost drowned trying to cross it. But Udrak helped them survive, and at the end of the book, they made it to Great Bear Lake. And now, book 6, Longest Day, they're at Great Bear Lake now. They split up to their own territories, obviously. Um, the brown bear's leader had died, so the brown bears won't stop fighting about who will be their leader. Um, and the white and brown bears kept fighting each other, and kept not staying in their own territory. And but Lucy, but when Lucy got there, there were a lot of bears missing because they got attacked. I think. What was it? They were injured or something. So Lusa and a friend of hers, OC, had to rescue some of the black bears, and Kalik and Yukon tried to help Lusa, but the black bears were unwelcoming because they're white bears and they were the black bear territory, but they wanted to help Lusa because she was the only one that knew about the herbs to heal, and she was tired and exhausted, and she really needed the help, but none of them knew what they were doing. But Kalik and Yukon did. Um, and the brown bears didn't think Toklo was loyal because he kept wanting to be with Kalika, Yukon, and Lusa. And then the black bears think Lusa is strange for wanting to be around Kalik, Yukon, and Toklo. And then the white bears think Kalik is different for the same reason. um, and the three bears want to change things and defend their friendship because it's not wrong that the three of them care about each other. But the other bears don't see that. The white bears decide to hold trials to find out who will be their next leader because they're also without a leader. And then there's this love triangle going on. I'm not a fan of love triangles, but like I said, they don't force romance. Like, it was very short and lived and stuff. But basically, Lusa has feelings for Miki, who also has feelings for her, but OC has feelings for Lusa. Um, but OC realized that Lusa and Miki were getting together, got a little upset, but they were able to reconcile things, so they were fine. And Hatak, who I mentioned hated Tokolo from last arc, is here, and Ayana shows up, and he decides to get, he flirts with her and pretends to be a good, kind bear around her so that he can make Tokolo mad and ruin his life by getting Ayana to choose Hatak instead of Tokolo. But Ayana, even though she did think Hatak was a good bear until later on she realized his true color, she still liked Tokolo, not Hatak. Um, and the white bears and brown bears fighting are getting worse as the book goes on. And Yoko and Kalik were fighting because he wouldn't talk or look at her, and Kalik thought he didn't want her anymore. Yukon was trying to push Kalik away because he thought she deserved better and was afraid she wouldn't be happy because he feels like he's damaged goods now that his paw is all injured and he has limp and he lost a couple toes. And then Kalik yells at him and says, "I know what I want and I want you," and so they make up. um, and then guess who shows up? Nanulak. He's the one that was sabotaging them and making the white bears and brown bears fight. Um, and Nanulak tried to turn Ayana against Toklo, of course, and there was a forest fire as Kalik, Toklo, Yukon, and Lusa were trying to get everyone to safety, and Toklo and Nanulak fought. Um, uh, and Kalik, Toklo, Yukon, and Ayana went into the forest to help the black bears with the assist of Udrak. Obviously, Udrak always comes back. And they defeated Nanulak, and luckily rain started to wash out the forest fire. Um, and then the main characters had to say their goodbyes and separate, and then it's kind of, and then the last chapter was kind of a little bit into the future. They've been separated for a while. They were all mated and had cubs, and they all introduced each other to each other's cubs, and that's how it ended. And it was really sweet. And But yeah, so I love the series, as you can tell, and I highly recommend it. It's really good, and it's pretty action packed at times, and there's a lot of adventure. So they're obviously always traveling, but they all found their homes and their happiness by the end. And I was very happy for them because I love these characters. But yeah, so please like and subscribe and comment if this video made you want to read the series. I hope so, and I'll talk to you guys later.